A very good evening to you and welcome to the Nation Leadership Forum with me, Ida Waringa. We are discussing the impact of COVID-19 on sports. Yes, here in Kenya, but definitely the impact has been felt globally. Now, to introduce our panel, I am joined by Ambassador and Dr. Amina Mohammed, who is the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage. CS Amina will be joining us shortly. I am also joined by Olympic marathon champion and world record holder Eliud Kipchoge, who joins us from his home. I am joined as well by General Manager, HR and Administration at the Kenya Ports Authority, Daniel Ogutu. Various disciplines and sports, most notably Bandari FC in the Kenyan Premier League, as well as both the men's and women's basketball teams and volleyball teams in respective leagues. And finally, we are joined by former Kenyan international and assistant men's basketball coach at the University of Texas, Peter Kiganya. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. It's fantastic and good to have you here. How are all of you doing? Let me start with Eliud Kipchoge. Eliud, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. All is well, yeah. I'm keeping safe.
Stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and of course, Ogutu, you can hear us well all the way from Mombasa.
Very well, Ida.
Glad to have you. And finally, Kiganya. Peter Kiganya, all the way in Texas. The weather is quite good there, we suppose.
No, actually, it's very hot, but I appreciate you guys having me on the show tonight.
Welcome to the show, gentlemen. It is a pleasure to have you. And as I said earlier, CS Amina will be joining us shortly in the conversation. So sports activities in Kenya ground to a halt in March 2020 due to effects of the COVID-19 outbreak. Since then, the lives of sports people, both sportsmen and women across the country, have basically gone up in smoke, been turned upside down, training schedules done, and of course the sporting calendar both globally and locally has come asunder. Eliud, I will start with you. It's definitely been a tough times for everyone involved, but we know that you have been doing your part, and especially with championing the food drive across various parts of the Rift Valley. How has the reaction to that been?
First, let me say that the disruption of the sports in the whole country and even across Africa to the whole world actually has been has eaten us in a wrong way. It has actually hit us I can't even describe, but all in all is that the camps were closed. They cancelled the matches, the competitions, they cancelled the football games. They closed the training areas. Where we can train, you can actually go there. But, we are risking a lot. I'm trusting that we might risk actually losing the sponsors. The big teams will actually risk losing the TV rights and all, and the staff. But all in all is that it has been really hard. I've been trying on my side to give a hand to the vulnerable athletes all across in North Rift, Central Rift, and South Rift. In order for them to actually keep going, because I am the one actually wearing the shoe, and they say the shoe wearer knows where he or she pinches more. So I've been crossing the 5 or 4 counties, giving them, donating some food stuff, the normal food and some blankets and whatever, which can actually help those athletes to actually have something to do as far as we are waiting for the world to actually open and become normal. So it's really, I can't explain. And if you interact with the community, if you interact with athletes, everybody actually is in shock that this thing happens. This thing actually came in a time whereby we didn't actually think that any uncertainty can come in. But all in all is that we are ready for the uncertainties, and many athletes, many people have actually learned on how to cope with the uncertainties. They know they have now a lot of shock absorbers. They can absorb shock in any form if they come any time soon. That's what I can say as far as how us at least here in Kenya is feeling, and how actually the COVID-19 has turned our lives upside down.
Absolutely, Eliud. A helping hand is definitely needed. And definitely in the course of this conversation, we will need your perspective as a current athlete. And of course, Peter Kiganya will come in as a former athlete with his experience. Now, I am honored and pleasure to bring to you CS Amina, who has been able to join the conversation. I am informed that they are currently trying to set her into the conversation, and we will be able to have her shortly. Let me take it to you, Ogutu, because especially in Mombasa with the Kenya Ports Authority, there was a 12-member task force that was appointed a few months back just to try and deal with sports policy surrounding the various teams that, of course, you support. So maybe you can just bring us up to speed with the developments of that so far.
Thank you, Aida. Before I come to that, I just want to say that it has been a very quiet moment for the sport fraternity at the Kenya Ports Authority. Just like has been summed up by Eliud, everything went quiet, and sad enough, the sport community at the Kenya Ports Authority also went silent. We have been a major sporting activity organization, and we sponsor 3 major clubs: Bandari FC, basket ladies and men, and the volleyball team at the national level. Their contribution to the national sporting arena has been very good and very impressive. So far, to go to the point, we had a task force to look at the policy. The policy was a realignment to the National Sports Act 2013, which required some adjustments on the new arrangement for sporting. I want to report that the task force has worked well, and I would say that Bandari FC was among the very first teams that aligned themselves to the Sports Act 2013, and it has a board, and the board is sponsored, I would say, is appointed by the sponsor, which is the Kenya Ports Authority. And so far, a lot of work is going on after the task force report.
Right, Ogutu. And yes, I am informed that we will be able to get the CS shortly. Let me take it to Peter in Texas. We do know that the United States so far, Peter, has recorded the highest number of cases and deaths, unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. How has it been in Texas? We have seen, the likes of the NBA and so many other sports in America just come to a halt. What's the situation like there now?
I think currently the situation is very fluid. There's a lot of changes coming every day, in and out every day. I think Texas, we started opening up the case. Everything was opening back, but once we started recording a high rate of positivity rate during every day, everything came to a pause. And as you have seen, I know you have seen, maybe there's a tournament basketball tournament being played right now, but the resource, the teams go in and everybody's quarantined in that location, and you can't leave, you can't go out. So that's the amount of resources they're putting in to get back to sports. Even the NBA is about to start. So, but the amount of everybody's going to be in a bubble. That means you can't leave. Once you go in, it's 3 months you're in there until further notice or a new resolution is found as regards the pandemic. Because for now, what is known as social distancing is the key, and people are playing, working out with. The trainers have to wear masks, PPE, no PPE gear during workouts. The players are being tested every day. So it's taking a lot of resources to get this going. So it's been tough everywhere, especially in terms of pandemics like this. We need sports, to give us, that break and that relief. But unfortunately, even sports, we can't do that right now.
Yeah, unfortunately. And as they always say, though, sports is that one unifying factor where so many things divide, sports definitely unites. And Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Amina Mohammed, is now able to join into the conversation. So yes, Amina, if you can hear me, it's great to have you. And as you've probably heard in the last few minutes, the gentlemen are just giving their reactions to, so far what we have seen has been industry disruption in sports due to the COVID-19 pandemic and outbreak. What are your thoughts on the situation so far?
Well, I agree with them, and thank you for having me. But I agree with what they've said. I think that there has never been such an impact, an adverse impact on sports in history. This is the first time that sports have been disrupted in this manner. Sports bring people together. Sports need an audience. Sports, for purposes of training and practice, actually need not only the fellow runners and pace setters and all that, but they actually need an audience. And so all that has been in 1 minute taken away from them. The rug was pulled from under their feet. They were already, preparing for the Olympics. They were preparing for the World Under-20. They were preparing for their leagues across the world, in different cities, across Europe and America, and even in China. And so it's had a very, very bad impact on sportsmen and women. And I think it's you can hear what friends have said. That this is something that they have never faced before. It's something they never really prepared for. They did not expect it to happen. Like everybody else across the world, I guess. It's just something that took everybody by surprise and made everybody almost redundant. The whole world came to a standstill. Nobody was able to move. Nobody was able to plan. Yeah? And so, so when it happened, after the initial shock, of dealing with it, and the fact that many of the engagements were then, postponed, some were cancelled, and so you can just imagine, right? These were sportsmen and women that expected to make a living, to earn, from their talent, which they have developed in a very, very difficult manner over many years. They've been preparing for the Olympics for a number of years, the World Under-20 for a number of years. We were hoping that this pipeline that we have of athletes, sportsmen, and women, would just continue running. We're preparing young athletes to take part in different events. So yes, so it took everybody by surprise, and it was a terrible shock, and obviously denied us a lot of opportunities to make money, opportunities to get entertained, opportunities to feel very, very proud as Kenyans. Because these are our ambassadors, they are brand ambassadors. Every time they take to the field or to the road, right? All of us are waiting for the outcome, and in most cases, the expectation is that, if he's a Kenyan, if she's a Kenyan, she'll win, right? So have been denied, a lot. The pandemic has really been devastating to sports. And so we're hoping that now that everything is kind of slowly beginning to, open up, that within a short period of time, we'll be able to start adjusting the manner in which we engage in sports, right, to accommodate this new reality that we have, this new phenomenon that we must deal with, but that we'll be able to enjoy our sports again.
Absolutely.
That we'll be able
to,
even if it's virtual, have the audience again.
Right. Allow me to cut you short there, CS Amina. Definitely, as you've put it, yes, revenue-generating streams have been put to a hold, but I do think, and a lot of people would also think, that creative ways will really need to be input as we move on to the future. We will get to that later on in the segment, but let me stick to you, CS, because just a short while ago, you did appoint an advisory committee or a task force to be able to provide the way forward, especially with the idea or the concept of possible resumption of sports in Kenya. So maybe you can just tell the viewers, what are some of the measures we are looking at in terms of such an undertaking?
Well, yes, I appointed a task force And it's a task force made of really eminent people who are engaged in sports, who are part of the management of sports, and of course the ministry. So I am expecting the report to come out on Monday. I was actually expecting it to come out on Friday, but we must engage all stakeholders, as you understand. The participation must be broad. It has to be a very inclusive process, and therefore the report will come out on Monday. Now, the idea is to see how we can open up within the guidelines provided by the Ministry of Health, right? But be able to also enjoy sport and participate in sport, and watch sports. So I'm hoping that the report will tell us how many people can engage, right, in this event, how many people can be invited to come to the stadium, how this will be done, how many support staff we will need, so that we have the sanitizers around the fields, we have the wash basins, things like that, so that we minimize any impact that this could have on those that want to just come and enjoy sport. So I'm waiting for the report to come. I'm sure that it will also be demand some resources, an injection of some resources to make sure that these protocols are put in place properly. I'm very happy that on the task force we actually have two very senior Ministry of Health officials that were allowed to come and join us by Honorable Mutahi Kagwe. So I'm really grateful to him for having done that, because it kind of stops the back and forth of us sending documentation to them, bringing it back and changing it and all that. And so we're really waiting and hoping that this report will give us a way forward that is acceptable to all the stakeholders, the athletes, the sportsmen and women, but also all the stakeholders, the federations, the sports organizations, the Kenyan public as a whole.
Right, and I'm sure, as you've said there, definitely all stakeholders in terms of Kenyan sport will be waiting with bated breath for that report from the task force appointed by CS Amina, as you've heard there, just to provide a way forward in terms of possible resumption of sports in the country. We will take a small break. We'll be right back. Let's pay some of those bills, and we'll be back with the impact of COVID-19 on sports. See you shortly. Welcome back to the Nation Leadership Forum, where we are discussing the impact of COVID-19 on sports. Now, before we did touch a bit in terms of industry disruption, I'll get right back to you, Eliud, because we were talking about the food drive that you were doing across different parts of the Rift Valley. But on top of the food drive, Eliud, is the fact that you and INEOS have, of course, come up with a very interesting curriculum that is targeting 11 to 16-year-olds. You have launched free digital learning courses. Now, the interesting part about this is that it's already been taken into the British curriculum. Just tell us a bit more about that.
Thank you, Aida. INEOS and myself, actually, we talked and we say, what can the world learn out of the 159 challenge? And we came out that these things should be rolled to the schools start in UK, that the students actually can see 159 in terms of they can do their biology subject and see and get the knowledge as far as 159 is concerned. They can venture into physics, into mathematics, and so on. But to learn more how actually 159 impacted the lives of the people in the whole world. And I'm happy because CS Amina is listening to me. We are actually in contact with INEOS that will approach the Ministry of Education in Kenya, so that they can actually adopt the same system actually in our schools here in both primary and secondary schools here in Kenya, because we learn more, we see more, and 159 actually cannot go. It can go a long way. That's our thoughts as seniors and myself and my management and the technical team.
Right. And Kipchoge, it's very interesting that you should say that. And I'll get to Ogutu and Kenyaga in just a bit. Allow me to throw it back to CS Amina. Amina, as you've had Eliud saying there, you know, it's very interesting in terms of that particular curriculum that has been taken up. Now, about 2 years ago in 2018, the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, ADAC, actually tried rolling out something similar. There was an MOU between themselves and, of course, the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, just trying to impart on the ills of doping, you know, to children early on. However, despite the MOU being signed over 2 years ago, there hasn't really been anything in terms of development on that front. So, you know, what does it say about us and maybe our systems that Eliud and his curriculum are able to be taken up by the British system much quicker than we are able to take on from our own Kenyan athletes?
Well, I don't think that actually that's correct. An MOU was signed with KICD, as you have indicated. The curriculum was actually being rolled out, especially after, you remember, after the policy was developed on the CBC. It was critically important that we actually have that curriculum in place because the whole idea was to nurture talent. We wanted to nurture the talent of our children, but we also wanted to make sure that they're aware of the pitfalls of some of those things that are out there, right? And I think we have seen, and Eliud knows this because me and him have had many discussions on, doping and anti-doping in sports. He knows that of recent, we actually have had several cases, right? And I think you saw the statement I issued basically saying that we intend to criminalize doping in sports so that our children and our young people and even our ambassadors, right, are not affected by this vice. You know, so it's not correct to say that we didn't take it up. If you sign an MOU, right, implementation obviously takes a little bit of time, yeah, and you know, I mean, it's also an issue of resources, but implementation takes a bit of time. But I know for sure that there was that the MOU was under implementation as I left the Ministry of Education, and I think that that's something that was taken up because it's actually a priority for the country. To deal with doping in sport. And you have to catch them young, right? To be able to train them differently and tell them that, look, I mean, as a Kenyan athlete, you actually don't need any additional help. If you train well, if you have the support of your country as they have now, right? Because we are able to support them financially, we are able to plan for their trips, to events. We are able to give them actually full support. And so, if they know that, they should be discouraged from doing that. Now, listen, it's not about just the sportsmen and women. It's about a whole ecosystem, and I think Eliud will tell you that as well. Yeah, and the idea is with the bill that is being developed right now, right? The idea is to actually target the whole ecosystem.
Right.
So if you health, personnel that has introduced this to our young athletes, we will find you. If you are one of the coaches and you do this, we'll also be able to, track you down and make sure that you face the full wrath of the law. So the idea is to make sure that everybody knows, right, that there is a price to pay, if you engage in doping.
Right.
First of all, I mean, you won't be allowed to participate in sports. We will not allow you to wear our uniform and our Team Kenya uniform to well represent the country because you already have dented the image of our country. So it's a serious thing. We all take it seriously. I'm very, very grateful to Eliud. He's been an amazing support system for us, especially in this area of doping.
Right, CS. We'd love to get a bit more into that. Unfortunately, I do know that we are dealing with time barrier constraints, but we'll definitely follow up on that issue. Let me get to Ogutu in Mombasa because, CS Amina earlier on was talking about just the preparedness surrounding the uncertainty to do with COVID-19 and its impact on sports. Ogutu, to you, what do you think your reaction has told us about the state of our preparedness as a country?
I want to say that our preparedness as a country is to get the sportsmen back. I know they went to all corners because of social distance. We need to bring them back, prepare them to their fitness, and get them ready to to start competing. But that has not been easy because remember, the social economic impact on the sportsmen was real. And I'll take the case of Kenya Ports Authority. For the people and sportsmen that support the clubs that we sponsor, particularly the ones that are not contract with us, most likely lost their income because they were being paid on number of games participated in. That was a sad moment because sporting activities were not going on, but we had to sustain their lives. In this respect, the KPA board agreed to pay them a small token on a monthly basis at the rate of 20,000 for the KPA volleyball men's team, the basketball team, both men and ladies. And this has gone on from March up to June. This has been a token of appreciation that they need to continue their lives, keeping fit wherever they are, and this will continue for the time to come. On the flip side of it, Bandari FC, which has a contract and has fulfilled the requirement of the Sports Act 2013, we have met our obligation to the last point. We pay them their salaries and allowances, we have kept the coach, and we have encouraged them to do exercise wherever they are. So in this respect, we're actually preparing for continental champions that are coming our way, particularly the basketball team for men and women, and the volleyball team. So as such, we are saying, apart from the team that we support, we are still supporting the talent pool that has actually passed through the KPA pipeline. And this will continue as we try to get them to get fit for the future competitions.
Right, fair enough. Peter, to you in the States, what has been your perception of Kenya's handling of the impact of COVID-19 on sports?
Actually, first, I would like to applaud, the government and the ambassador for stepping in and giving a cushion through those athletes. But there's still a lot that needs to be done because, there's a lot of sports who haven't received any help. And also going to KPA, Mr. Ogutu, I appreciate what they're doing and minding the welfare of the athletes. But, the question is about moving forward and how long can we sustain this giving tokens? I'm a beneficiary. I played for KPA back in the 90s. So by the time the difference was very different, there was a big difference then. We were normally employees of the company. And so even, if we were not playing, we would still be going to work. So we just need to look at different approaches to it. As he's mentioned, the football team, the soccer team is under contract, and but we would like to see the same happen for all sports. That would be a step in the right direction to have all these players under contract that in case of something like this happens, they have a good cushion and they can employ them as employees. I know the minimum wage is like around 40,000 Kenya shillings. So again, that would be a very big boost to the players, not having to worry about what does their future hold in terms of uncertainty. Or let's say, for example, if I'm playing just on allowances, what happens if I break a leg or get injured? I can't play. Is the viability of having these athletes as employees of the company. So because I know I got in, obviously they have to look at your qualifications, but we did work for KPA, but we also trained after we left work, we would go and practice. But again, that ensured our livelihoods and our families because we are already employees of the company and we would practice. So I think there's a lot, we need to do a lot in just ensuring that players are under contract and their welfare is not long-term goals or the long-term upkeep of these players is taken into account.
Right, and allow me to get back to CS Amina, because earlier on we were talking about, for example, what Kipchoge has been doing in terms of championing the food drive across different parts of the Rift Valley. We've seen the initiatives from Kenya Ports Authority. Now, from the Ministry of Sports, not too long ago, there was the stimulus package that was given to different members, vulnerable members of the Kenyan sports fraternity. We do know that different members and players in in the Kenyan Premier League specifically did get some amount of money. Now, there was an appeal from you, CS, to, different stakeholders and sponsors to try and come on board. So just for the sake of the viewers, how has that initiative developed since?
Well, that specific initiative has actually been very, very good. We have been able to support over 2,400 sportsmen and women. We've given them, I think we've now given them the second stipend, the second month. We're giving them 10,000 each month. We'll continue doing that for as long as we have resources. Some of the corporate, partners that we approached have been absolutely generous, and they have come forward and given us, support. Government has also put in money, right? So it's a very, very good partnership between government and the corporate sector. And I think that the sportsmen and women have been very, very gracious because they appreciated this. They've sent very amazingly, positive messages back to the ministry on how that package has supported them. We've also given, food rations to our lady sportsmen and sportswomen, because many of them are single mothers with children at home. They also support, obviously, some of some have, families, and so they get the food and support the families. We've done that twice now. We've been doing it every two weeks. And they're also extremely, grateful that they could get that support. It's not a lot of support, but I think it helps them, to a certain extent. It takes away some of the pressures that they have. So they get the 10,000, all of them, the men and the women, and the women get the food rations. Now, today I was told by one of our, friends in the corporate sector that he actually has 420 packages of food, and that basically means that we can give additional support to our sportsmen, as well. And so I'll be having that conversation, and we'll decide when we can draw that out. We've actually begun, and I would call it a really robust private sector engagement. And we want to tap into the investments in sports. The idea is basically not to just do the stimulus package, the support that we need, but we want them to come up with actually sponsorship deals, right? Because some of our elite athletes deserve those sponsorship deals. If they can get sponsorship deals abroad, I don't see why those in the corporate sector here cannot do the same. And so our conversations have been about even monetizing sports, about commercializing sports. How can we have a win-win, situation?
Right.
The stimulus package we see as an interim measure, right? So we need to come up with much more sustainable ways of supporting our teams.
Absolutely.
For the national...
allow me to actually leave that part for the next segment, because we will be focusing solely on financing and monetization. But CS, as per the last count, there was an amount of around 50 million given from the government towards this initiative. Do we expect to see more from the government in this?
Well, the thing is that, there's so many priorities in government, and I think that we're really, really grateful to His Excellency, the President, for making the money available to support our athletes. And so we got the 50 million from government. We got 20 million from the corporate sector. So we had actually 70 million, and to devote to the monthly allowances that we're giving them, but as also to devote to some of the food packages that they were receiving. So we have the resources for the next 1 month, right? So that would have covered 3 months. We are still appealing, and I'm really, really grateful that you've given me this opportunity once again. We're really appealing to the corporate sector to come forward. We have to support our sportsmen and women. They don't come to ask for support all the time. They came because of the pandemic. It's a rare ask that they have of us. And so I'm just appealing that everybody should come forward and support our sportsmen and women. They always do us proud. Right? And now we should do them proud. They can't just be doing all the work. We must support.
Absolutely. And before we go on break, let's actually touch on athletics for a bit, because the season is right around the corner. It will start in August. And of course, we have seen Kenyan athletes who will not be able to participate, at least in the opening leg of the season, due to the ban that has been in place. Kenya omitted, of course, from the list of countries who are allowed to travel into and out of Schengen countries. As an athlete, Eliud, what has been your reaction and your feelings in terms of this latest development?
Actually, it was unfortunate actually to actually these people to include Kenya, but all in all is that I hope that the sanction release will really. I have a lot of people talking to all the Schengen countries, but I trust that Kenya will be allowed to participate in August, especially in track and field, whereby to start in Monaco and the rest of the cities. All in all is that what I'm advising my athletes, my colleagues, is to actually observe the government directives, and that's what the world needs. And in fact, that if all of us as citizens come together and observe what the government has told us, then the other world can also allow us to participate. So it's not a big thing, but I think what the world is seeing us in a good mirror, that they can allow us soon. 1 month to come is still a huge, still some days, and I hope they will ease the restrictions and allow our sportsmen and women. Because if they don't allow, we are actually at risk of losing those huge talents. We never know what happened for the last 3 months. What those people, where are they? And we might lose a big huge talents. On the other hand, if we don't allow these athletes actually, if we don't give them a chance to show what they have been doing during the lockdown, then they might lose actually the sponsorship deals abroad, because it's the only way you can run and show the value, show that sponsor, show that company that you value them and show your value. That's the only way to keep your sponsorship. We are actually in a hard time, but I think it will pass, and athletes actually will be allowed to participate next month in August, in order for them to actually enjoy life as far as sports is concerned.
Right. It really is a domino effect, the impact of COVID-19 on sports. Let's take a second break. We'll be back shortly with more comments from the panel. Welcome back to the Nation Leadership Forum. We are discussing the impact of COVID-19 on the Kenyan sports industry. Now, Peter, I'll take it right to you, because I want us to get into the issue of financing and monetization of the sports industry, which we know has already, prior to COVID-19, been in a financial chokehold. What lessons can we borrow, do you think, from how the United States treats its sports? Of course, we are not at that level. Some would say we are far off, but what lessons on the most basic level can we implement?
I think we have different structures which are in place that we can use to the fostering sports. For example, we have the sports fund, which if we utilize that, we can use that to maintain the national teams. We can have players with the national teams, for instance, on retainers or national or yearly contracts, which are based obviously on performance, so that these would foster competition and foster development, and so players cannot have that conformity that I'm not in the national team, then I don't have to work out. But what does that do? That gives them a supplement income, which they can do extra training, because as we know, it's visible from what Eliud has been able to achieve. You have to put a lot of work in to get good results. That work needs a lot of resources at your disposal. So we can have these national team players on retainers contracts. These players can also buy extra food, extra supplements, go to the weight room, put in extra work. And also what does that do to the sport, to the sporting level? At the sporting level, everybody else aspires to be in the national team because they see how those national team players are being taken care of. And then so every national team becomes a big deal, and there's even more pride in wearing the colors. And so if we take examples of what's going on around us, we cannot afford to leave money on the table. For example, KPA recently, they had qualified to play in one of the biggest tournaments in Africa. They had gone for the qualifiers, but unfortunately they don't travel. And most of the teams that qualified, those players have received big contracts, which has cushioned them in this time. So there is different things right now, we have the structures in place. We just have to take that opportunity and work to the best of what we have based on our individual circumstances. These are lessons we can learn. We don't have to invent a lot. There's already structures out there. If you look at teams like West Indies cricket players, they're on retainers, and the team is one of the best teams in the world. It doesn't have to be a lot, but we have to do something to make these players feel appreciated. I know I'm saying this from a point coming from, I've played for the national team, for Kenya basketball team for years.
Right.
But when you look back at it, you're like, wow, like what were the achievements? Like where do I stand? What did I gain? Like what was my value of playing for the national team? So again, we have to make sure that the national team is seen as an elite. It cannot be seen as a club. We have to make sure that there's a distinction between a club and the national team.
I hear you, Peter. And yes, it was an unfortunate situation with KPA and their participation in the inaugural Basketball Africa League. To you, Ogutu, I mean, Peter has brought up that issue, and it really does tie in at the end of the day with sponsorship, because look, it's something that a lot of Kenyan, stakeholders, players alike, will always jump quickly to as a crutch. But what is the role of sponsorship? Because at the end of the day, there has to be a return on investment for the investor. Ogutu, if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Right.
I want to say that it was quite an unfortunate situation that we found ourselves last year, but that will not be the same again, because we have to make sports become a full-time engagement. And we have started that with Bandari FC, which is a full-time engagement, and they were able to participate in all their continental engagement. Besides that, the other teams that we sponsor, like Bandari basketball teams and the volleyball teams, we want to move them a notch higher and put them on performance contracts and have their participation become a full-time engagement. How are we going to do this? We want to reach out to our rich stakeholder base within the maritime industry to come and put in more money and resources, so that we don't treat sports participation as a part-time issue, but a professional engagement to expose and grow the talent pool that we have grown over the years as a corporation. So we have just completed our sports policy, and from the policy we are going to reach out to our many stakeholders that are willing and will be ready to support us in this particular game. Thank you so much.
Well noted. And Siasamina, to you, because Peter did bring up an interesting issue just in terms of comparison between the United States and Kenya. He did raise the issue of the sports fund there. Now, it's a similar situation here, but it has been a bit more controversial. Specific federations coming out to say that, look, the monies in this sports fund are not quite easy to get to. Your reaction to that, and how sports can move forward with the sports fund, especially considering the recent boost of 14 billion from the recent budget?
Well, thank you very much. We are really happy that we have more resources at our disposal to support our sportsmen and women, but also to focus on sports facilities and infrastructure, because that too is important to put in place, so that they have a place where they can practice, a place that they can use to showcase their talent. So I just wanted to mention one thing, I think, before we get into everything else that I have to say. And that is that we have had conversations with the European Union. And I'm talking about what you and Elliot discussed, about not allowing our sportsmen, and specifically athletes, to go for their Diamond League and all the other events and engagements that are going to be taking place in Europe. And I think now we have an assurance from the European Union that they're going to treat these cases as exceptions, and that they are working really hard to make sure that our sportsmen and women can get into Europe for this event. So I don't think that will be a big issue anymore. Government is fully engaged with the EU. We understand why our athletes must go. And actually, I think that if our athletes don't go, there will be no event, right? There's nobody to compete against. I mean, we're actually the best, right? Second to the US in athletics, we are the best in the world. So basically, I mean, we must be there. We must be there. And so we have had discussions. I'm hoping that they will be fruitful, and that we will not have our athletes will not have to cool their heels here when they should be doing what they need to do. So I just wanted to get that off the table. As far as the sports fund is concerned, I think it's very, very clear that it's called the Sports Social Development and Arts Fund. So basically, it caters for social development, it caters for sports, and it caters for arts, right? In fact, the percentage for sports is about 35%. Yeah? And so that whole kitty is not targeted towards sports facilities and sportsmen and women. We are having discussions about those percentages. We hope that those discussions will be successful, so that we can have much more resources at our disposal. Now, for the last year and a bit that have been in the Ministry of Sports, we have never had a case where a team, and a national team, was going out and was denied resources. We have not had that case at all, whether it was the Paralympians or everybody else. We've made sure that they have the resources that they need to go out. We're under a directive by His Excellency the President to make sure that all our teams are able to participate, right, in events that they're invited to, or in events that they actually deserve to participate in because they won earlier events. So basically, I don't think that is an issue that arises now. So it's not even an issue that should be discussed anymore. We have the resources. We actually have a roadmap on how to do this. We have structures in place. We have open discussions with our federations, sports organizations, to make sure that happens. Now, you cannot compare the US and Kenya. I mean, it's actually a false comparison.
Not at all. And that is, if you will allow me to interject, Madam Waziri, that is why we asked on the most basic levels, because I do believe that the biggest room often is the one for improvement. So on the most basic of levels, what lessons can we be able to borrow from countries who have developed more than us? And just going back slightly to the previous issue, we did cover some issues between the ministry and different unions and federations in the course of last year and beginning of this. With the development of the sports fund, can we now be able to say that there has been reconciliation between the ministry and some of these federations and unions?
Well, I've never had a problem with the federations. So I'm sorry that that's been an issue. I have never had a problem with the federations. We've had an open door policy. We've had discussions. I go to visit with them. So we've never had an issue. Those were issues of the past. We have actually laid them to rest. Now, on the comparison between the US and Kenya, you cannot. The US government does not support sports as much as the government of Kenya does. Sports in the US supported by the corporate sector. Fully, completely, totally. So there is no comparison. In fact, we are a model for developing countries and a model for many developed countries. In the UK, right, it's actually lottery that supports the national lottery that supports sports development. So we actually should be patting ourselves on the back. We should be saying thank you very much to His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta for setting up a fund that does not exist anywhere else, where the government actually injects a lot of resources, right, to support our sportsmen and women, because we are so proud of them. We want to make sure that they don't fall behind. The US government, and I will repeat that, does not support sports. Sports is supported by the corporate sector in the United States. I actually did a study on it as soon as I got into the Ministry of Sports to see what countries support sportsmen and women. So I think that when we get into these conversations, we must do a bit of work to make sure that the facts that we're putting out are correct, that there's no confusion about the support. And of course, the corporate sector in the US supports sportsmen and women a lot.
Madam Waziri, for purposes of time, we do have to move on because of the barriers of time. Let's move on to the state of sports infrastructure in the country. To you, Eliud, because it has been a serious case over the last few years, stretching almost into a decade now, when as a fellow athlete, you do look at the situation surrounding stadium and sports infrastructure in the country. What are your thoughts on it specifically?
I think my thoughts actually as far as building the stadiums and everything in the whole country is, although it's going on slowly, but I think we are working CS, Amina, and I think Amina can do all things actually in the next few years. Because, but all in all is that stadiums have not been built, but I think it's on pipeline. But I can't say more on that. Reason number one is that, you know, I am an athlete, and although I need somewhere to train on it, but, you know, as far as administration is concerned, then there is those who are actually doing administration in the whole country, and I can leave the whole issue to them. I mean, actually, is you can talk freely, and every citizen actually can actually reach Amina in a easy way. So I think we are on a good hands of the government, which I think CSS can answer that question in a good way.
Absolutely, and we'll get to CS Amina, of course, the ministry's perspective on the development of sports infrastructure in the country is quite important on this. Looking at the flip side, or go to you in Mombasa, we do know that there has been an understanding between KPA, Bandari FC, and of course, Baraki Sports Club. Just give us a bit more insight into this, specifically from the viewer's perspective. When we look at development of stadia, yes, for training, but also for competition venues for our sports people.
I want to confirm that Kenya Ports Authority is putting a lot of resources to facelift Baraki Sports Club to the international standard. Currently, there's work going on. We are doing a lot of refurbishment to the standards that we now provide for us to host international matches. I would say that if the current works is completed, I'll be so sure that we will not have, or we may not be in a position, we will be in a position to host many international matches at Baraki Sports Club. So we have done the center stand, we are doing the grounds, and we are also doing where the spectators would really sit or stand to spectate our sportsmen and women as they participate. I want to assure you that for example, in Mombasa, this is the only sports ground that can now host an international competition for the time being. Besides Baraki, we also have KPA Makupa Welfare Center, where we have the indoor gymnasium, which is of international standard and can host basketball, volleyball, netball, and any other indoor games that would be necessary for the moment. So with that, I think KPA is strictly and generously supporting the infrastructure that is required for development. To confirm that, I would invite Waziri just at her free time, just make a visit to our Baraki Sports Club, just to see how prepared we are for the international competition and to host them here in Mombasa. Thank you so much.
Well noted. Madam Waziri, to you, what is the ministry's stance on the development of stadia across the country? We have seen a revamp across different counties. And what are some of the timelines, specific timelines that we are working with?
First of all, let me just accept that invitation that was made. I'll definitely come and visit to see your level of preparedness And I want to just thank you for the invitation. The development of infrastructure is actually a priority for us. It's a very serious priority. We have set ourselves the timeline of December to complete a good number of them. I think you've seen us traversing the country to just make sure that we're where we're supposed to be, that we are on track, that we are not falling off track. I have already said that any contractor that I feel is not keeping the promise to the Kenyan people, the promise to our sportsmen and women, the promise that we've made to His Excellency the President, that contractor will not continue working with us. So far, many of them are actually on target. We expect 2 of them to be completed by end of July, 15th of August. There are 2 stadia in Meru. We hope that those will be completed then. Nyayo and Kasarani are almost done. In fact, we are going into the second phase of Nyayo next week. So basically, I mean, we are on schedule. Kamarini is a bit of a worry, but the contractor is on the ground, so we're hopeful they'll be able to get the work done. The Kipchoge Stadium in Uasin Gishu, I think that one is on target, so we should be able to get that done.
Okay.
On Kisumu very, very soon. So basically, sports infrastructure, I think, is a serious priority for us. We are under direction from His Excellency the President to have them completed so that Kenyans can actually start using them.
Right, Madam Waziri. Thank you so much. On a final note from you, it would be remiss for me not to ask. Many achievements in the last couple of weeks for you. You were admitted to the bar recently, and now there are reports that Kenya is backing you for the Director General post in the World Trade Organization. How do you feel about this? Quickly, in maybe about 30 seconds, please.
Well, humbled, very much so, and really grateful to, again, His Excellency the President for nominating me, for the confidence that he has exhibited. And I'm looking forward to that challenge. It's going to be a long drawn process, so we don't expect to see the end of it until the end of the year. But basically I'm very, very pleased with where Kenya is at the moment, and the fact that even as we announced the nomination, that there were a lot of positive responses from across the world.
Right.
And so we're really happy with that.
All right. Thank you so much, CS Amina. They are just, if my director will allow me, closing remarks. Gentlemen, please, in under 30 seconds. Eliud, a lot of people were disappointed not to see you at the London Marathon. Of course, that was postponed from April to October. Quickly, tell us, how have those preparations been before I get to Ogutu and Peter to wind up?
Actually, preparations are going on well, and I trust that London Marathon will actually happen in October. I'm preparing well. I hope by next Monday, CS actually will allow us to go back to the camp, because we are actually observing the directives of the government in our camp. Secondly is that I'm looking forward to do actually show the world that even with the COVID and with the uncertainties, then we are able to run in a good way. That leads that I want to take this opportunity to wish all the very best to CS Amina for her candidature for World Trade Organization, and I trust that the whole country will keep a big pack up to her. Right. I want to actually have corporates. Let us come together as to actually what's required in this country. Kenya is a lovely country, beautiful country, and together we can actually make this country a running country and a beautiful country. Thank you.
Fantastic. Peter, 10 seconds, please. Over to you in Texas. 10 seconds.
Just thank you for the opportunity for having me. And as Eliud has said, wish the Minister goodwill, Secretary for Sports goodwill as she moves forward with her candidature, and continue to do the great work she's doing in the Ministry of Sports. And we appreciate everything everybody's doing to highlight the plight of athletes in the country.
Right. And of course, so good to you in Mombasa. Closing remarks, 10 seconds, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. As an organization coming from the corporate world, we want to still continue building the talent pool and attracting more persons into sporting arena. I would want to appeal to other corporates to to come in and support sports and also give our youth the opportunity to earn a living. In the event that COVID-19 takes a different dimension, the youth must be able to be supported to get an income, and therefore the corporate, we appeal to you, support this cause. It is necessary. COVID has not been an easy moment for the sports people.
All right.
Let's leverage on this and give them hope.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot for your closing remarks, gentlemen. And of course, thank you to you for tuning in to a Nation Leadership Forum, where we have been discussing the impact of COVID-19 on sports. Sports can be a vehicle for change. Lots of creativity to be employed and should be employed in terms of generating revenue from this huge multi-billion-dollar industry. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I am now handing you over in the next few minutes to Mark Masai at the top of the hour for the 9 p.m. news. Have a good one. Take care.